Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unwrap, the Pick and Roll podcast. I'm Adam Webster, and today I'm joined by Pick and Roll feature contributor Tom Hersz. Tom, welcome back to the show. Second week in a row, we're making a habit of this.
We are indeed, but there's lots to talk about at the moment on a number of fronts, and I'm really looking forward to today's chat with a man that I've known for quite a while. I just realised coming up on probably a decade, so looking forward to getting stuck in today.
Well, I'd like to give our guests a little bit of a rev up, so I'll go through this man's background. Attended the AIS as a junior, then Oregon State for college, and assistant coach in Italy, director of scouting for the Philadelphia 76ers, and since mid-2021, the general manager of basketball operations for the Perth Wildcats. It's been a big week for Danny Mills. Danny, thanks so much for joining us on Unwrapped.
Thanks for having us, Adam. Good to see you, Tom.
Pleasure to have you with us. I think we have to begin with the recent social media post from Perth legend Bryce Cotton, thanking the city and the organisation for all they've done for him and indicating he'll look to move in a different direction with his career. Firstly, what was your immediate reaction to that news, and how does it change or evolve your approach in this off-season, especially given the financial flexibility I imagine that decision affords you?
Yeah, obviously, I think it's been pretty known behind the scenes for probably the last 6 months. We've been, in negotiations with Bryce and seeing what his future holds as he comes into a free agent period. And for us, obviously, initially it's disappointment. Like Bryce Cotton, like he's best Wildcat we've ever had. Unbelievable 9-year tenure here in Perth. You talk about all the MVPs, the championships, the scoring titles, just an unbelievable competitor and performer, and honestly has probably proven himself as one of the best players outside the NBA in terms of what he's been able to contribute on the court. And for him, it's a decision to take his career in a different direction. And for us, obviously, we wish him all the best. He's an amazing person. We loved having him here at the club, representing the club, but also excited for him. He's 31, turned 32. He's still in the prime of his career. Had an amazing, probably maybe his best ever, statistically, his best ever season this year in the NBL. And that has opened up a lot of doors, as he's had for the last 9 years. Like, he's been committed and stayed very loyal to the Perth Wildcats for 9 years. He has opportunities all over the globe. And it's an exciting period for him and his family. And we wish him nothing but the best.
What does that mean for what you do from here on in, Danny?
Yeah, look, obviously, as you prepare for free agency, this happens years in advance, and as it gets closer, obviously this year and months in advance. And, there's obviously there's a team you build around Bryce Cotton and the salary that commands. And, the NBL has a salary cap. And then there's also plan BCD where Bryce doesn't return, and that opens up quite a lot of flexibility. And I think you saw a couple of weeks ago, we announced the re-signing of Kristian Doolittle. Obviously Kristian, we brought in 2 years ago, has been absolutely amazing for us. He's 27 years old, just entering the prime of his career. You saw how he played this year, but also finished the season into the playoffs. I mean, game 3, I think, is just kind of shows you the type of impact he can have at this level. And so for us to be able to lock down an import for 3 years in this league, that's pretty rare. And for Kristian to commit to us, we feel really excited about, and we feel like that's going to be a foundation going forward at a position that's crucial in this league.
Danny, speaking of Kristian Doolittle, as you mentioned, able to lock him down for a multi-year deal, you guys have also brought back Jesse Wagstaff, who it's great to see that he's going to go around for another year. I think everyone was hoping that he would do that. But given the seismic shift in the backcourt with Bryce's departure, Two questions. Firstly, how important is it to have some of these guys coming back just to have that level of familiarity, and veterans as well, guys that you can rely on and they know they're going to kind of set the new tone for the team? But also, secondly, I'm interested to know if Kristian Doolittle, based on what he did, especially in the second half of this season, is someone that you guys now think you might be able to build around rather than just having him as a complementary piece like he was when he first came in.
Yeah, so to answer your first question about Jesse, the ball's always going to be in his court. He's earned the right for that. He's, like you said, 17 seasons he's going to be coming into. When you look at the club's been around for 43 years, and he's been in 17 of them, won 6 titles. Unbelievable leader, competitor, and just a person to have around the club. So that consistency for us was crucial. And when we sat down with Jesse, it was a quick decision. Like for us, it was, we want you back. And for him, it was actually really quick. So that was exciting to land that back, and just the experience he brings us, and the consistency, and just the continuity of having some of our veterans return, crucial. And then to the question on Kristian, obviously, I think what we've seen, we've had enough. We've had two seasons now of evidence that Kristian is an elite player in this league. No doubt, he's an all-NBL talent. And for us, it was an easy decision to try to secure him long term and to get him for the maximum 3 years, which is the longest contract. You know, you can't sign further than 3 years in the NBL. Was I think a win-win for both sides. He's got fantastic security for his young family to remain in Perth. They loved it here. We loved having them here. And for our roster going forward, definitely a piece that he's going to be an absolute, a guy that we can build our roster around on both ends of the floor.
What's your approach to team building this offseason, and what do you and your staff look to prioritise as you talk to players and agents over the coming weeks and months? And probably, what are your non-negotiables when recruiting players?
Yeah, look, when I came in here, we had Scott in my first year, and we inherited a large part of our roster and added to that. And then obviously now John and I have worked together for 3 seasons. So we've got a really good feel for how he plays, what he values on the court. That's crucial. That's the number one. Like if we're signing players that don't fit into his system, then we're going the wrong direction. So John and I are very aligned. I mean, number one is bringing in competitive players and guys that have a track record and a history of winning and impacting winning at their previous situations, whether it's been junior basketball, at the college level, wherever else they've played professionally. And so I think that plays into a huge part of how we, I guess, form the prospect list that we go through at each position when we're going through free agency. Now, we have got a lot of guys off contract at the moment, and we've got a lot of guys that we want to bring back. So, we've started that process with Kristian and obviously Jesse, and we've got other guys, obviously, that we're in deep negotiations with, and, can't announce a few of them because it's not until April 4th. But for us, it's competitiveness, and then it's about fit within our roster, and the fact that we have got a guy like Kristian now that we can build around. And we loved our group last year. Like we were so close. Like it was, we loved the group. They were really together. It was a good mix of experience, young talent. You look at the jump Ben Henschel made. You look at the 19-year-old Ethan Almanza that had come over. Had spent a couple of years at Overtime Elite with Alex Saar, who we had the year before, and then he went to the G League and came to us. We've got other young talent throughout the roster that we're trying to develop. And then we've had this core group that, I think there's going to be some changes, but for us, consistency going forward is going to be crucial. But just making sure that every guy we bring in is a competitor and has that winning mindset.
One follow-up from me on Ben Henschel specifically. Obviously, a budding young star in Australian basketball, represented the Boomers in those young Boomers sides. There's been a lot of draft buzz around Ben and his future and potentially following in the footsteps of others that have either declared or gone over on two-way deals. Where do you see Ben at the moment, and what sort of support are you and the club sort of giving him as he works his way through that process?
Yeah, it's a really exciting time for him. Like his goal since day one, since we recruited him out of the Center of Excellence, was he wants to be an NBA player. And I think one of the best traits Ben has is the inner confidence in himself. And I think you see that clearly when he's on the court. And this year he made huge strides. He got the opportunity, but he also earned it, and he took it. And he did everything we asked of him last offseason when he went to Otago in the New Zealand League, and then came back and earned his spot in that starting five. And you look at a young 20-year-old, turning 21, coming into a program like ours that has a guy like Bryce Cotton playing next to him, and you have these other veterans that have played in the NBA, Dylan Windler and other players. And he took his opportunity and he performed on the biggest stage. So for us, it's about supporting him through this next step. He's going to head over to the States, and whether he gets drafted or not, or whether he decides to stay in the draft, I think that's you still got three months away to decide that. But for him, it's about getting that experience and getting that exposure. And we think over the last 2 years, he's got amazing exposure at our program, where NBA teams are very interested in looking at him as a potential future draft prospect.
Danny, there's obviously going to be a considerable amount of change for the roster and the product you guys put out onto the floor, but off the floor, there's been some change around the club as well over the last year, with Mark Arena coming in and taking over ownership of the club. He was a guest of the show with Adam back in October, shortly after he took over. But I'm curious to know how things kind of changed around the club in that period since Mark has assumed control.
Yeah, it was. So last off season we had a good season. Lost in that game 3 to Tassie. Went into the off season, had a lot of players under contract still, so there wasn't as much roster change, but there was a lot on the other side of the business, which is obviously ownership that was starting to change. And once we learned that Mark was going to take controlling stake in the club, it was exciting. He's a young, very successful entrepreneurial tech background. Perth born and raised, went overseas and had successful businesses that he built up from the ground, and has brought that knowledge and that skill set into the club. And he's working here daily. I think people do, it's out there, but he's owner, but he's also CEO of the club and not taking a salary. So he's working here day to day and instilling in us, the vision that he has for where he wants to take the club, but he's also in those decision-making processes with our executive group. So, he's come in. We have a C-suite now in terms of executives. So we have an executive group. And then throughout the whole business, he's come in and he's evaluated where the club's at, what he wants to add. He's got fantastic ideas. I think he's been very vocal about, we're in a privileged position here in Perth with a club that's had amazing history and success, and we're trying to evolve it into the next stage, and that takes time. And we have an amazing fan base that gets behind us, and so it's about making sure that those fans are heard, those members are heard, and we're taking on board their feedback, while also, in the background, we're planning not just for next season, but what do the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years look like for the Perth Wildcats as basketball continues to boom here in Australia.
We've seen that Mark was able to secure a world-class new facility from the West Australian government that you and your staff will call home in future years. How important is it in free agent and player retention conversations to have that sort of certainty around where you'll be based and the quality of facilities you'll be using?
Yeah, we're so thankful and fortunate to the state government here that they've invested in that for us. It's something that we've been trying to work on for the last 4 years since I've got here. We're definitely in a privileged position here at Bendat Basketball. We do have a good facility. It's run by Venues West. It's a state-owned facility. But for us, take the next step, and I think it's for all sport in Australia, but specifically the NBL. When you look at where the AFL and NRL are at with their facilities and their team headquarters, the NBL's got to take that next step, and that's investing in their own elite or high-performance facility. And for us, that's exactly what our vision is, and hopefully, within a couple of years, that vision will be an actual physical building that'll be able to call the Perth Wildcats High Performance Centre, and it's huge, like you talked about in recruiting. The next step here is making sure that all of our athletes have the best facilities to develop themselves, and that comes from our academy that we have here that's been running for 3 years now with the backing of Rio Tinto as a major corporate partner of that, and making sure that the grassroots level have the facilities and the expertise and the coaching to get them to the next level, while also housing, a home for our club as well.
As Adam mentioned at the top, before you came back to Australia and joined the Wildcats, you had a long career with the Philadelphia 76ers, predominantly in scouting. And I know you spent time both in the US and in Europe. So I'm curious to know how that experience and the network that I know you've built up over the years of contacts is kind of setting you up when you enter these free agency periods, and gives you the right sort of intel when you're looking at players to evaluate and making those right kind of personnel choices.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate to work for 7 years with Philadelphia in a number of different scouting roles. And I think when I came into this role in Perth, that's really helped with one, just understanding the landscape of global basketball, understanding where the NBL fits within all these other leagues that we have to compete against for players. And, you know, also, as you talked about, the relationship side of it. So having contacts all over the world that they're not just people that you've met in the last year, it's relationships that have been ongoing for the last 15 years and they've just built up. And now those people are in prominent positions at different clubs. Maybe some of them have gone into agency business, which is a huge one. So having agent relationships around the world where you can tap into, you know, understanding where the marketplace is, and obviously having relationships where they trust to bring a player to you, you know. And we've had, the last 2 years, we've had great success. You know, Alex Sarr was one that was, a lot of it was driven through relationships in the background. Having Ethan Almanza here this year, very similar situation. You know, these are two prospects that could have gone anywhere in the world, and they chose the Perth Wildcats outside of any other club in the world. So for us, that's an exciting. I guess that's exciting for us that global basketball looks at the NBL, but specifically us as a club as a really good place for players to come and play and kind of compete for our club.
Could I just quickly to follow up, just for my understanding and the listeners' understanding, you talked about Alex and Itan coming, choosing to come to the Perth Wildcats. So is that basically you then go and have a conversation with the NBL around, can we get them through the Next Stars program because they really want to come to us, or is the Next Stars program being involved in that process along the way? How does that actually play out in reality?
Yeah, no, that Liam and Vince at the Next Stars program do a fantastic job of, I guess, circulating names of players that have interest in potentially coming to Australia. It's kind of a unique program where you get access to potentially, you know, this type of level of player that where the league and the club go in partnership to bring them down. And so for us, it's, you know, obviously you can bring names, but for them, when they bring names to us and then there's a connection, a mutual connection, when you start doing your background and research, that's where I think it really helps in terms of landing those kind of guys where, you know, there's 9 other clubs in a league that they could choose, but they look at maybe the clubs that, one, you know, they feel like they have a really good trusting relationship and a good feel about how that player can go there and then develop.
And given the success you've had with your Next Stars the last 2 years, is this something you're looking to continue into the future?
Yeah, it's a fantastic, I guess, mechanism for a club. You know, it gives you a 12th roster spot, and it brings in an elite a high level elite junior player that can hopefully can impact winning. It's hard to find those guys at that age. You're talking about 18. Alex was 18 when he was here. Ethan was 19, 18 turning 19. So very hard for those guys to impact in the NBL, but fortunate that we were able to find 2 of those guys. And yeah, continuing on in that program, making sure it's the right fit is crucial because there's a lot of, you know, as much as number one priority always is for the Perth Wildcats to be contending for championships, but making sure that that player has that in mind while also we're trying to develop them as well and give them the best environment where NBA teams are going to be able to evaluate them and give them the best chance to get drafted and kind of realize their dreams.
Staying on the global topic, we've seen a lot made of the NBA, NBL preseason games over the past few seasons, with the Breakers sort of coming out of the last couple of days and saying they've asked not to go to the States next season. And even the Jack Jumpers' recent trip to Singapore ahead of Hoops Fest in the NBL 25 season, with most teams that participate in those international trips struggling to perform when they return to Australia. You guys went to Japan really early on in training camp and were able to make it to the semi-final stage of NBL 25. What did you learn about that experience, and why do you think you were able to buck that sort of trend?
Yeah, I think probably the timing of it. You know, I think Perth. I think this was back in maybe 2017 or 18 when the Perth Wildcats were invited and they played Utah and Denver over there. So we haven't been involved in any NBA preseason games, although every year there's opportunities to do it. I think as a club, we look at high performance, and given that the timing doesn't really work, we start our season before that. So to be traveling during the season, it's probably not in line with the goals of the club, which is to win. And so for us, it was like, all right, how do we take the club international? And it's doing it in preseason and doing it in our preseason. So for us, 2 years ago, we got invited to play against the G League Ignite in Las Vegas. Amazing opportunity for the club. And then this year, a big strategy when Mark came in, and it was something that was already being worked on, was trying to take the club into Asia and Japan. specifically. And we got that across the board. Mark was extremely excited about it and invested in that. And yeah, we played three great clubs there: Nagoya, Chiba, Yokohama. Had a great trip as a club, and then came back, and that was during our preseason. So for us, the timing's perfect. Great chance for the guys to bond on and off the court there. And so for us, it's definitely a strategy and something where we want to take our brand internationally, specifically into Asia. And this year, we're going to host, the plan is right now is we're hosting an international preseason tournament in Perth.
Yeah, I was just going to come to that. You guys are kind of flipping that script this year and going to bring some teams out to Australia as part of your preseason preparations. And if I'm not mistaken, from what you've told me in the past, you're looking to potentially bring some teams from Japan and possibly even Europe to come down for a little tournament preseason. What are some of the benefits that you guys will get in terms of your preseason preparations by playing against teams from different leagues and different styles?
Yeah, I think there's numerous benefits on and off the court. I think it gives us exposure, again, into that Asian market for us. And then it gives us a chance to play against non-NBL competition and gives the guys a chance to play against a different kind of style of basketball. Obviously, last year we played Japanese teams, so forming those relationships and then giving the opportunity for a couple of them to come to Perth and experience Australia. And then also, as you mentioned, targeting a European club as well, which is, I think, that the next step as well is, we feel like where the NBL's at, we need to start competing against the other best clubs in the world. The NBA, to me, is in its own little silo. It always will be. What's the next best? And, there's EuroLeague at a very high level, and then there's all these other leagues around the world that we should be looking to compete against. And we've got a big enough brand. We've got we've had enough success. The league's at a great place. Larry and his team have done an amazing job of building the brand and the on-court product. Now it's about how do we take that out to the rest of the world and show them where Australian basketball is. And so bringing them to Perth, showing them, one, how beautiful the city is, Australia, and giving them an experience here will no doubt then give us opportunities again to go abroad in future years.
And just finally from me, Danny, stepping back into your past, you've spent time at the AAS and you've seen Australian basketball sort of change and evolve over the past 20 years. Are you happy with where the sport's at in terms of its popularity from juniors right up to professional leagues? And what do you see as the biggest growth opportunity for the sport in Australia over the coming years?
Yeah, it's been mind-blowing coming back 4 years ago to Perth and just seeing the grassroots, the state of grassroots basketball in Australia and how strong it is. When I grew up here, when I played Wobble, which is Western Australian Basketball League, the junior level, I think there was maybe 1 or 2 divisions per age group. Now there's 5. And it's just, and the waiting list for kids trying to get on representative teams, let alone domestic clubs, it's unbelievable. And so I think it's known facilities haven't kept up. I guess the boom wasn't anticipated well enough. And I think state governments and hopefully the federal government are starting to look at that. And facilities are crucial, right? Because otherwise there's a huge barrier for access for players to play. But hopefully that continues. And then on the elite level, so grassroots are booming, which is what funnels everything up. And then at the elite level, I mean, you look at the standards of our national teams, you look at Australia getting to 3rd in the world in FIBA ranking back in 2019, winning the bronze medal in Tokyo. Like, these were things 20 years ago we would just dream about, and now we're competing at that level. And there's I guess there's a demand across the board that basketball stays there. And we're not just talking about an Olympic sport. It's the second most popular sport in the world. And we're competing in the top 6-7 nations in the world for a population of 26 million people. So the state of the game is at a great place. I think the next step is obviously how do we grow? We are limited in population in Australia and we're isolated. But for us, our closest neighbors is Asia. And for me, that's the next step. Like, you got 2 billion people sitting on our doorstep and, playing in some sort of Champions League of Asia with our top clubs is definitely should be the vision and the future of the game in the region. Australian basketball now, we don't qualify through Oceania for Worlds or Olympics. We qualify through Asia. And so that's where our club should follow. And you look at the strength of what European basketball is, and that's all of their countries and their domestic national leagues in their countries. Their top teams are playing against the best clubs throughout the continent, and that's where we feel that's strongly where the game is, and that's just not just high performance. I think as a country we can really provide Asia with high performance knowledge and experience. Like those teams want to play against Australia to get better, but we need the 2 billion people to grow our product off the court, and the corporate support, broadcast reach is just it's kind of something that has to really be, I think, focused on over the next decade.
Well, Danny Mills, we really appreciate your time today on Unwrapped. It's your Super Bowl coming up over the next couple of weeks with free agency, so all the very best as we approach the off season, and good luck in NBL season 26.
No, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate your time.